Last week, Robert Kennedy Jr. announced his 2024 presidential campaign. He'll compete in the primary against Mr. Biden, assuming Mr. Biden does run. On the screen, you can see CNN's coverage, and it includes the audio of Jake Tapper calling Mr. Kennedy, quote, an anti-vaccine quack, healthcare menace, and anti-science. These are obviously not flattering, but it's to be expected from CNN, as this is the same narrative that they've pushed since coronavirus. Right now, Mr. Kennedy is definitely not a one-issue candidate, and he has support from various environmental groups as he spent much of his life as an attorney who specialized in environmental issues. Another issue is Mr. Kennedy's well-founded concerns about something that News Behind the News has reported on, which are central bank digital currencies.
Now, yesterday, Kennedy slammed the Fed's new FedNow central bank digital currency set to launch in July. Quote, CBDCs grease the slippery slope to financial slavery and political tyranny. While cash transactions are anonymous, a CBDC will allow the government to surveil all our private financial affairs. The central bank will have the power to enforce dollar limits on our transactions, restricting where you can send money, where you can spend it, and when money expires. A CBDC tied to digital ID and social credit score will allow the government to freeze your assets or limit your spending to approved vendors if you fail to comply with arbitrary diktat, i.e. vaccine mandates.
That was quite a summary. American Media Periscope has covered the lack of privacy and ability to limit transactions, but the real cause of concern should be the potential for two aspects. First, the expiration of money, and second, linking the use of central bank digital currencies to certain behaviors. In other words, if you don't comply, they will use the digital power to turn off your access to your own money. This should be a concern to anyone who has issues when it comes to abuse of government power.
He is finding issues that resonate with voters that are not talked about as much in the mainstream, that seem to tap into this fear of growing authoritarianism, which many people felt that the COVID policies, which weren't very well targeted to actually preventing the spread of COVID, many of them were a part of, and positioning himself as someone who, regardless of what the mainstream media is going to say about him, is willing to get between authoritarianism and the people. What do you make of this kind of approach and how people like Jake Tapper are framing his launch?
Yeah, well, I think the reason that RFK Jr. is able to launch a bid like this is exactly because of the way he's being treated by Jake Tapper.
A candidate who gets between growing authoritarianism and the people is an interesting assessment, but the commentary about how people have perceived the overstep authority and poor handling of coronavirus policies is rather illuminating. The people who see the abuse of power are the people who will be more likely to listen to the warnings about central bank digital currencies. But Mr. Kennedy is not alone. Listen to publisher and former presidential candidate Steve Forbes.
Government bureaucracies won't be able to resist the temptation. They'll always have excuses like fighting crime or combating tax cheating. CBDCs would give officials a powerful tool of control and manipulation. It would be an irresistible drug for central banks trying to direct the economy. If they think the economy is overheating, they could freeze a certain percentage of your cash. Or if these poobahs decide that things are too slow, they could punish people who, they conclude, are saving too much. Spend it or lose it, they could decree. If you have undesirable political views, you might not be able to access your money, since traditional cash would be outlawed and your digital cash would be in a government-approved digital wallet. Digital cash would even allow governments to fine-tune monetary policy with individualized interest rates. Then there's the all-too-real challenge of security. Digital cash systems would be a hacker's delight. The treasure trove of data governments would have on every aspect of your life would be breached.
Mr. Forbes did a good job explaining the potential for abuse that Mr. Kennedy is campaigning on. Privacy and control are the two common complaints, and they're totally legitimate. But if you recall, the expiration of money was also previously mentioned. Just the notion that people could be, quote, saving too much is absurd, but it carries an unexpected threat. If you cannot save, then how do you prepare for an uncertain future? If you cannot save, then you're going to be giving up your self-reliance, and since you have no reserves to fall back on, this is yet another potential for government control, because you'll need their handouts if you cannot provide for yourself. Mr. Forbes also used the expression, spend it or lose it. If money can expire, then that's really a government loophole, which is just theft. The campaign of Robert Kennedy will be an interesting one, and while American Media Periscope is not issuing an endorsement, AMP is hoping that Mr. Kennedy will draw attention to the central bank digital currency issue and get people to realize that this is not just another app or tech convenience. This is liberty-ending potential, and it needs to be stopped. For more news behind the news, go to AmericanMediaPeriscope.com. I'm James Madison.